I'm Niamh Cassidy, a former social care worker who, after having my own children, found a calling as a childbirth educator and lactation consultant. Back when I started this journey, I faced the same challenges many of you might be experiencing right now, struggling to get enough clients to make my business viable long term. I knew in my heart that I had the skills and knowledge to make a difference, but the thought of marketing and selling left me feeling a bit uneasy. I didn't want to compromise my authenticity and values just to attract clients. I invested in trainings and mentorships, and I tried various strategies that I learned, but it often felt like I couldn't implement a lot of it because what I was being taught didn't match my values as a birth and postpartum worker. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hand. I embarked on a mission to learn, to experiment, and to find ethical and authentic ways to share my expertise, support my clients, and build a sustainable practice. Today, I'm proud to say that I run a thriving private practice, and I'm here to share my insights with all of you to help you to do the same. Join me on this journey as I help you bridge the gap between your passion for supporting new parents and the success you deserve. Together, we'll discover the power of ethical, authentic, and effective approaches, not only to make a living, but also to make a positive impact in the world of birth and postnatal care. Let's get started on this empowering journey together. In today's episode, I'm talking to Katy Murray, and we are having a chat about balance and trying to create balance between our work lives, our family lives, our personal lives, and looking after ourselves. Katy is a photographer with her own business, but she also works full-time in HR. So she has lots of tips around managing our time and creating intention in our lives. Not only does Katy work full-time and have a photography business, she also co-owns a VA business. So she's very skilled at helping entrepreneurs find balance in their lives. So let's dive in. Hello, Katy. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. I have just introduced you and given you a little bit of your bio, but I know you wear very many hats, and this conversation around balance is something that's important for you. So how did it come up for you even initially in thinking about creating balance in your life?
Yeah, great question. Initially, we're all just trying to strive for balance. And I think pre-kids is very, very different than post-kids. I realized that I really wanted quality time with my family, but I also didn't want motherhood to become my sole identity. So for me, that's kind of where the conversation started. And that started obviously once I got pregnant and then just continues onward, probably forever.
And when your baby was born or when you were pregnant, were you doing all of the things you're doing now, or have you dropped some things and added some extra things in since?
Definitely added extra things in since for me during the early stages of motherhood after my daughter was born. I'm in the US and they declared the world pandemic. And I remember standing in my living room and just struggling with postpartum, struggling with this new norm, but also struggling with the bigger things going on. And so I actually decided I wanted to start a podcast at that point. So that was a huge endeavor that I added on, but also a big release. So it kind of has multiple benefits to it. And then also, different things and priorities have shifted. So my main source of income for my entrepreneurial journey, which is a photographer, dropped off. Like I still do some, but definitely not what I was because now I have other priorities. So yes, lots has changed. Lots has come on and fallen off since becoming a mother.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of us, that's when that balance conversation really starts to happen. It's easier, I won't say it's easy, but it's easier when you don't have children to have a job and maybe a side hustle and hobbies and different things and not feel that you're letting somebody else down or you're not doing something you're supposed to do. And I know in particular as women, we can often struggle with that, with wanting to be the parent or being the mother, but also wanting to do other things as well. And somehow trying to balance those priorities, those passions can be tricky.
Absolutely. And it's a lot to navigate, not to mention the feelings that also come into play and then the time and just so many elements. But yeah, it's just a time of a lot of reflection and kind of learning the new role, I think, as being a mom and embracing the elements that work well for you and stuff. So it's always a constant challenge to find that balance.
Was there a point for you? Because I know for me, I was so passionate about getting my business started. I worked full time. I had children. I was trying to do all of the things and trying to work really hard to get everything set up. And then there's this realization of I'm not doing anything particularly well. I'm doing too many things a little bit, but not having enough mental energy, space to do any one of those things as well as I would like to do. And I know for me, that was a turning point of saying, well, I need to pause, I need to stop, and I need to figure out how to make this work better. Was there a point for you where that came into play?
It kind of has to be revisited for me in each chapter that we're in. My biggest thing, and we'll dive into it more later, is that my biggest fear in motherhood also became my biggest saving grace, which is that things are ever evolving, ever changing. Because if I'm in a phase today when I just can't, and like you're saying, like I'm not doing anything well and I'm not sure how to do it better, there's a new day tomorrow. And my child is ever changing. Like, it from birth to like 9 months is just rapid. Every single day is different. And it's still every day is different, but I feel like I'm a little bit getting a rhythm. So with that, yeah, every chapter, every season, I have to revisit and slow down and reset my intentions for that supposedly time frame, if you will, just because now I have a toddler who's learning my sass and giving it back to me in the best of ways. But there's days when I just don't know how to navigate that. Or there's days when my daughter's very verbal and I feel like she's really good at communication. So sometimes she'll be like, Mommy, I need love today. And what that means is she needs quality time. Like she needs me to physically be close to her, but also because she's not super like touchy feely. She's very independent, which I love, but also there's times when she slows me down. And that's when I'm like, okay, we got to make sure we're putting this time in the day. So yeah, definitely have times like that all the time.
They're so good at telling us what we need to hear sometimes, isn't it? I know mine are a little bit older, but over the summer, because we're just coming out of the summer holidays or vacation here in Ireland, to school holidays, there was a couple of times where my eldest said to me, Mom, you're always working. And it was because I was working during the hours he'd normally be at school, but now he was at home with me and I wasn't as present as he would have liked or as present as I would have liked. So I know for myself next year, when I'm planning the summer break, that I need to do a little bit more planning around that to make sure that we all have a bit more balance over that summer period, because it just didn't really work that well for us this year. And I think the seasons, them being bigger and having different sorts of needs, played into that as well.
Oh, yeah, I completely relate to that, because also what worked last summer for a younger version of your child might be so different and you might be in a different state. That's again why it's my saving grace, is that we just continue to try to do better and we can take what we experienced this summer or whatever and do better next summer. Because my thing is, I find my child thrives when I have hands-on activities prepared for her. She's in a learning program normally anyways, so she's very used to that stimuli during the day. And then she'll even, when we have quiet time, she's like, this is circle time, like at school. And so I learned that she needs that quiet time throughout the day, but then also she needs that hands-on activity. So I recently went online to just start researching fun things for kids that are simple. And that's been a huge change. Whereas last year she was much younger and kind of could just play with items. She didn't have to have as much agenda or structure. That's completely relatable. And then you just see what works next summer for you and where your intention falls,
Absolutely. And the ever-changingness of it is so interesting. I'm really interested, as I mentioned at the start, you wear so many hats. How do you find the time to be that intentional with your toddler and still do all the other things that you do?
Yeah, great question. So I am the head of human resources in a private organization. So I run that department and support all other elements of employment throughout the organization. So we have around 600, 550, 600 employees. So that's a pretty big endeavor that I was blessed to kind of fall into and absorb and learn and grow. And then I am a business owner as well. So we have a couple businesses that we run technically as side hustles, if you will, but not exactly, because we put the same amount of passion into them. And we do have a couple team members who help support and run them. And then, yeah, we have 2 puppies, a child, and I run a podcast that releases episodes twice a week. So I stay pretty busy. And with that, I think my biggest skill set that has helped me through that is my time management. For us today, it's holiday and it's 7 a.m. and we're on this podcast and my child hasn't woken up yet. So just having that drive to get up and get going before the world kind of starts is helpful, but also slowing down really helps, because there's days when I don't need to be productive at work or in the business and I can just be intentional with my child. And that's actually, I have 2 recordings this morning and then the rest of the day, email and life is shut off and I'm just with my daughter, and being as intentional on the motherhood side as I am on the business side. So obviously like this is very intentional. We set a time and I'm showing up. And I try to kind of take those same pillars and apply them to motherhood, because motherhood doesn't come super naturally to me. I don't feel super inclined to just sit and play with my child. My husband does. He's very, very much that way. And he'll be on the floor just moving Legos and making them talk. But knowing that that's not my strength, that's not my skill set, instead going back to those activities and being intentional with my time with her and really time blocking it. Like the rest of the day is hers and I'm not going to play with other things. I'm just going to be focused on her. So that's kind of what helps me. And then, the other times when she goes to bed or when she's in outside care, that's my time to get stuff done and really not letting them bleed into each other, as hard as it is.
Feeling stuck in your birth work business, posting nonstop, answering DMs, juggling admin, but still not getting the clients you want? It doesn't have to be this way. I've put together the Birth Workers Business Playbook, a free guide with 3 simple systems to help you get visible without spending all day online, book clients with ease, no more ghosting, streamline your admin so you can focus on what you do best. These are the exact systems I wish I had when I started, and now they're yours, totally free. Download the Birth Workers Business Playbook now and start growing your business with ease. Head to the show notes to get your link for your free copy.
I think that was probably what got me started in thinking about this idea of balance. It was that everything was bleeding into everything else. So I was trying to type up client notes when the kids got home from school after seeing clients. I was trying to answer emails while they were trying to talk to me after dinner. There was just so much going on. And I really found the benefit of time blocking as well, of saying, this is what I'm doing now and this is what I'm doing then, and they're separate. Sometimes things will bleed into each other. It's just natural. Sometimes things are more urgent and you don't expect them to be, and they might come up. But definitely actually sitting down and writing it down and putting it in the diary has been helpful for me.
Yeah, I agree. And it's that goes back to that intentionality and also setting boundaries, right? Because you have to be honest with yourself. And I wouldn't bail on this call for you. So I'm not going to bail on me or my daughter this afternoon. And that's like a boundary I also had to learn, because with my husband, before children and that we both worked, if I text him and say, hey, I'm running late, he'd be like, okay, I'll just stay at work late. Like we could balance each other out. Whereas my daughter is not yet to that point. I imagine in teen years, maybe if I'm running late, she'll be like, oh, I'm at Susie's house and I'll stay longer. But at this point, it's not really fair to put that on her. So I have to be really intelligent and intentional with setting those boundaries to be there for her. And I think for me, that was also one of the harder ones, because I can sit and play for like 15 minutes and then my mind wants to be doing something more. It's just interesting to see my own mindset shift and change. And I'll be honest, like Saturday, my husband was working, so it was me and my daughter all day. And it's still a little challenging being one-on-one with her for an extended period of time. I mentioned that in the beginning, I might go into this a bit, is like my postpartum journey was not the most easy. And I don't think that anyone's really is easy. We all just cope and embrace it differently and have different experiences. But with me, I didn't exactly like being alone with my daughter, just because I think the responsibility of it and my own emotions were a bit whack. And so then having her depend on me, and it got easier, and it's still getting easier, I would say. But then I do have those moments of self-doubt creep in and be like, wow, I'm on my phone for 5 minutes when I'm with her and I shouldn't be. And then I have to remind myself, it's okay. It's not all or nothing. You can check your phone. You can text your husband and ask again what time he's coming home just to set that intention to get through the day that way. But Yeah, there's still definitely moments. Like Saturday, I had a little cry fit and, she saw it and she came over. She's like, Mommy, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm just having a hard time. And she comes up and caresses my face and says, it's okay. Let's play with stuffies together. And then we just continue onward. But that's that grace again that really helps.
I do think that's so important, being able to give ourselves some grace, because we can put so much expectation onto ourselves. Sometimes people talk about societal expectations, but we do a lot of it to ourselves as well. And I think that's something that a lot of people who I've supported around their business journey, so birth and postpartum workers, have struggled with. The expectations, in particular, if they are not working in an employment job outside the home, so they have their business and they are the primary caregiver as well, that the expectations of them doing everything, so doing the housework, the cooking, all the childcare, it's like, well, when is there time for business, or for me as well? Obviously working full time plus running businesses plus having a child, that must come up for you as well, of how do we fit all these things in and whose role is it to do what?
Yeah, it definitely does. And that's something you just said. My husband and I had the conversation on Saturday, is I was kind of pleading for help, saying like, hey, I'm not doing good. This isn't going well. Like, I'm struggling right now and I want to pour more into her. And he just like, again, he was at work. So he texted back and he's like, Katy, you got to step away from those expectations. Like, you're not the same mom that raised me or that raised you, because our moms were both stay-at-home moms exclusively. That's the way that they have been upbrought, and that's the way that they see things. And so sometimes I take on their expectations, but like, this has been my journey the whole time. My husband's worked from home for a year and cared for the child. We have a little bit of role reversal here for what, our norm should be. And he was like, you got to step away from that. There's no question that you absolutely love our daughter. Just because you don't like sitting on the hardwood and playing with her nonstop or making silly noises doesn't mean that you don't love her. And so definitely taking away those expectations for myself is so beneficial and really rewarding when you can get out of your own head in that way, because there's so much for us to balance. And I also learned that like, we ran out of dish soap a day or two ago and I wasn't going to the grocery store. So we have dishes in the dishwasher and like dishes on the countertop. That is okay for that to go by the wayside and come back to it once my soap gets delivered later today, and just spend that time with my child. She's still being fed. She's thriving. We're all alive and it's okay. Just really giving yourself that grace, I think, is so important.
Absolutely. And I love the way you were able to say, well, you know what, I'm just going to leave the dishes there. They will get done eventually. I'm not going to be running out to the store when that wasn't what my plan was. We'll manage until we get there. You're talking about getting your groceries delivered. And sometimes people have a block against that, as if you're not doing the grocery shopping properly if someone else picks it up and brings it to you. But it can save you so much time when you've got a busy schedule. I stopped doing my grocery shopping. I now get it delivered, but that gives me back maybe 2.5, 3 hours a week that I can then focus on the kids or my work or whatever it is that I choose to use that time for.
Yeah. And that's the perfect segue into one of my, I guess, time management things, is like outsourcing what you can, because my husband loves to take my daughter grocery shopping and they will grocery shop for hours. And that works out great if it's on a day when I'm at home and then I can just plug away on work or whatever, or even self-care. But that's not something that I find joy in. I remember the last time I went grocery shopping, which was a couple weeks ago, and I was like, boy, would our mothers be so upset with me, because I was like, I don't know what aisles what. Like, I remember as a child, again, with a stay-at-home mom who she knew, she went up and down each aisle, grabbed what she needed. It was really swift. She had 4, 5 children at times. And that was her job. She was systematic about it and she did so well at it. Whereas I'm over here like, nope, I can log in first thing in the morning, order my groceries, have them delivered. And then the fun is just putting them away with my child. And that's 20 minutes, not 3 hours. And especially as business owners, I think too, to speak to that is, let's just say hypothetically, it costs me $200 with delivery for groceries, and that saves me 2 hours. Well, what do I get for 2 hours in my business? If it's photography, I charge in the upwards of $600 per hour. So now I've made that money plus more. Or you can't quantify time, quality time with your child. So if I get 2 hours with my child, like that's priceless. Like there's so many things to think about, especially it can be tough when maybe finances, especially in the early years of having a child, can be tight. If you can kind of bounce back the time that you're getting back and the investment that you're making, how does it work for you? Because that was a big one for me. I have a kid now for the rest of my life. Should I really be spending money on a house cleaner and delivery of groceries? Yeah, for me, it works. But you have to get in that mindset of being okay with it. Even as simple as we do have house cleaners as well who come every other week. And this last time was the first time I was home when they came. And she asked me, like, where do we put our clothes? Where do we put our shoes? And where's all the secondary bedding for the beds? And I like showed her. And then the next time she makes the beds every time too, which I feel very badly about. But she's like, no, we do this for everyone else. We've just never done it yet for you. And that's huge. And that was a mental thing I had to let go of. Would I rather be spick and span and have a gorgeous house that I've invested hours and hours in each week? Or would I rather be able to showcase like the love that my daughter and I share and the bond that we have because we play for those hours or whatever? So yeah, just finding different balances and what works for you and how you set yourself up can be so beneficial and such a relief mentally too.
And outsourcing something like cleaning, which when we're running our own businesses, one, we might not have time to do, and two, it might not be something we enjoy. It's definitely not on my expertise is cleaning. So being able to outsource that, as you put it, can just be so helpful because not only are you getting that time back that if you want to use it for work and paid work, that you now have income coming in to support that, but you're also supporting someone else's business and allowing them to do work that they are good at and that they're getting paid for.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're likely 10 times faster than you because it's not my expertise. It takes me forever. And there's like reels going around when a woman or a mom is cleaning and she goes in the kitchen to do dishes and then goes around the house to find the rest of the dishes and then ends up making the bed and like never gets one project done. Well, that's going to take you 4 hours. Whereas at least for our cleaners, there's 2 or 3 people who come in, they do it. It's 60 minutes and it's over and done with and back to normal. And that's way faster than I could ever get it done, especially if my toddler's with me. So it works. And like you said, it supports them. And our cleaners are a woman-owned, Latina-run business. And I love that we're able to support a minority and someone who is actually passionate about it, which is also mind-boggling for me, right? We all have our own skill sets. And so if that helps them and that helps me, let's do it.
And then as well, outsourcing within the business. You mentioned that you do have a couple of contractors or employees. Did you make that step right away or was this something that came over time?
Great question. So I actually did that the year, I think that my daughter was born. So I've been in the entrepreneurial world for like 11, maybe almost 12 years now. So over a decade. And I didn't pull the trigger until like year 8 or 9, maybe, which quite honestly, I wish I would have done it way sooner. I think having a child kind of gave me the push / like excuse that I needed. But I started that, I think in 2019, we brought someone on and they just helped with administrative tasks. And then realizing that I want my business to continue to grow, but I also, again, need that balance in other areas. We were able to outsource certain things. And so we do have contractors. They function as team members because they're on retainer and long-term with us. But we also have a virtual assisting firm. So Katy & Co is my virtual assisting firm. So we help other businesses attain similar success and presence and marketing as we've experienced to grow our businesses. And in able to use my expertise to support other businesses, I had to have a team behind me because things have drastically changed in our lives. I want to be there with my daughter. I love my day job. I'm not the type of entrepreneur who wants to leave my full-time role because I'm actually very, very passionate about it. And I wouldn't get that same experience in a startup or entrepreneurial role at this point. And so bringing on that help. And some of it, you mentioned like contractors or employees, you can also just outsource certain elements of your business. And I love that too, because again, let's just say like you are a doula and you're passionate about being in the room and supporting mom in those moments, but your strengths is not administrative or the intake of a client or onboarding them as a client. You can outsource that or use a system to support that that's going to save you so much time and energy so that you can just invest that back in the moms that you want to work with. That's why I do it, right? Because I'm passionate about this element and not maybe as strong of ability. Or even honestly, if you're prideful and you want to say, I can do it all, awesome, but you don't have to. So even if you can do it all, you can't ever grow more than your own two hands, right? So have someone help, someone who is also, again, passionate about what they're doing. And to your point, then it helps them grow their business and allow them to put food on their table too. I think it's really beautiful.
I do as well. And I think for a lot of people, that what you said about, well, I can do it, so therefore I'm going to do it. But if we go back even to that cleaning, it's like, yes, I can clean my house if I have to, but it's going to take me hours and hours and hours. Whereas someone who's good at it is going to get it done much quicker. And I'm really interested in your experience from the end of the virtual assistant business owner end of it. A lot of people have kind of blocks, one, in thinking about taking that step of hiring a virtual assistant or someone even to do tasks within the business. What happens that brings people over that block to actually go and say, I need this and I'm going to do it?
Great question. So I think there's two main things that push people over. So I was on another podcast recently and someone reached out, and the topic of the podcast was, how does a multi-talented person navigate all the things? And so it was going back to that time management and the act of balancing, which I also like to refer to more as synergy, but I use the word balance because I think it works. But with that being said, that's how I found one client. Is she was like, I do a lot. I do work 30 hours a week. I'm a photographer. She dabbles in influencing. And she's like, and I heard you speaking about how you can outsource. And then I also trusted that, well, you're doing exactly that. You have multiple hats, so I can trust you to do it. And that was probably the easiest sale thus far. She just got on the discovery call and was like, okay, send me my quote. I'll pay. I was like, awesome. Like, I will take your money. And then the other one would be the lack of knowledge. So they really want to show up on social media, or they want to leverage Pinterest in their marketing campaigns, but they just don't know how. So it's either they don't have the time and they're getting to the point where they realize that and that it would be more efficient to outsource it, or they don't have the knowledge base. And either is completely fine. Because again, we just talked about that. If you don't have enough to be able to, enough time, enough energy to do it all, even if you can, then don't. And if you don't have the knowledge, then you don't have to dive in and spend hours and hours and hours learning about the analytics of SEO on Pinterest and building that out. You can just find someone who's already an expert in it and let them apply their skill set. So those are the two different kinds that I see that I run into. And again, I think motherhood, parenthood, caregivership is one of those things that can move that needle for you, because maybe all of a sudden you find yourself in a new stage with a toddler that isn't what it used to be. Like maybe you were thriving up until they became that running around crazy toddler, and then you struggle. And I'll also say this is not something that we've really offered, but I did speak to another mom recently who does virtual assisting, but she only does short-term project-based gigs. So if mama is pregnant and due in October, they might outsource X, Y, and Z for 2 months time period to set them up for going into maternity leave. And so she does very, very short-term agreements just to get mamas through the hardships. And I think that's really beautiful too, because when I first had my child, I don't know that I was ready to commit to a 3 to 6 to 12-month contract with somebody. So being able to just say, hey, manage my emails so that I can have peace of mind my clients aren't being neglected, but they are talking to someone live when I'm on maternity leave. That's beautiful, right? So there's a lot of elements in that I could totally just go on and on about. So I can get wordy, but there's that.
Yeah. And I find that sometimes people feel, well, I'm not far enough along in my business to pay for something, so to put that money down for the support that they probably need. But it comes back to, again, if somebody can get that done because they're an expert in a much shorter period of time, then you then have that time back to earn money with your own clients. And so it pays for itself.
It does. And the big thing too, the elephant in the room, is it's hard to onboard someone to work for your business, right? Mm-hmm. You are probably so passionate about what you do. If you have your own business, you're probably very, very intelligent with exactly what you want to serve and how you want to do it. And you know all the ins and outs. And so it can be a lot to say, hey, here, Susie, why don't you help me with this? Right. So also be mindful that there's a small learning curve, right? Mm-hmm. So our cleaners had to learn a little bit more about how we prefer things to be cleaned or where we prefer things to go, because they're very sweet and they'll put items away. But sometimes we have one pair of shoes we can't find because they were putting them on a shelf versus where we keep our shoes or whatever the case. So you have to be ready for that learning curve and really take a step back and say, you know what, this might be an expense right now, but it's going to be a benefit. It's going to have an ROI. It's going to have a return on investment, and it's going to be something that you're probably going to really appreciate later. And take out all other elements of business, right? Forget that I'm a podcaster, forget that I'm a mom, forget all that. Even with a business, if I want it to grow bigger than my own two hands, I still need help. And now throw everything else in on our plate, and now I need more help. So I do think it is just sitting down, running the numbers. I'm not saying don't have food on the plate for your children because of this, but if you go into it intentionally and you really are mindful of your time and your energy, that you are pivoting away from putting on that outsourced task, then I think it can be hugely beneficial. And again, it's going to take a little bit of trial and error, but you're going to get there and probably be very thankful once you're maybe a month in and you're like, wow, this is really, really great.
Definitely. I know that's been my problem. I've been in my head planning on taking someone on for so long, but my big block is that having to onboard them and the time that you're going to have to put in to do that. And realistically, I know the payoff for that down the line, but so far I haven't managed to get around it. But I think I'm on the way now. Yeah, I'm getting there.
I think it takes us all forever. It's not, and you probably can relate to this, but it's almost like your business is your baby. That's how I've always looked at her. It's very different now that I have an actual child, but I do approach the business with the same passion, the same zest, the same everything. Like if you need to find outside childcare for your child, it can be daunting and hard. You don't want them to use words that you wouldn't use or discipline differently than you would. And there's so many things that go into that. So it's okay to give yourself grace and take the time, because you want to go into it with the right mindset too.
Absolutely. And I think it's a lovely comparison because, we want to grow our businesses so much and look after them and nurture them, and leaving off that little bit of control can be a bit hard, just like when we send our child to childcare or someone else cares for them. It's hard to kind of leave that over to somebody else. But then the benefits is the reason why we wanted to do it in the first place. What do we get from that? So before we finish up completely, is there any other tips, or what are your big pillars of kind of creating that balance or synergy when you're a business owner and have lots and lots of hats?
Yeah, I think most of them we covered. Again, just being intentional, setting boundaries, and we just hit on it a little bit, finding childcare if you need that break. If you aren't finding the synergy that you need, it's okay to want to have some alone time away from your child, and also just giving yourself grace. We touched on outsourcing. I think the only other two things I would say is make sure you're scheduling time for yourself. That can be very simple. That can be the few minutes in a car ride. That can be reading a book. I love to listen to audiobooks or other podcasts, or sometimes even just music. And then, of course, if you have more time, take a bath or go for a jog, do what fits your needs, but scheduling time for yourself, and also just slowing down. I find that if I slow down and I go at my daughter's pace, our life is 10 times more beautiful. I would say early on when we were trying to get out the door and I was trying to get to work on time and drop her at school, it was constantly, okay, do this. Now put your shoes on. Now do this. Now do this. Now do this. She knows the routine. So if I wake up 15 minutes earlier and I'm ready and I let her go at her pace, it's going to be a beautiful car ride, and we're going to play a game and we're going to sing songs together, versus her being kind of grouchy because I've been rushing her all morning. No one wants to be rushed. That kind of goes back to the same intention that I started with, that like I scheduled a time with you, so I'm going to honor that. Well, I know I have this time with her, so I'm going to honor it. I'm not going to sit here and rush you. Okay, next question. Let's keep this movie. Let's keep this movie. I'm never going to do that. So why would I do that to my child? She's a human as well. And so I try to slow down and go at her pace, and in turn also slow myself down and just breathe. I can enjoy my cup of coffee while she takes, a few extra minutes to slip her sneakers on or Velcro them, or she takes off her shoes 2 more times before we actually get them on and leave. Because if you're constantly in the state of stress and your emotions are heightened, it's just going to be so much worse. So just slow down.
Yeah, and it's so lovely. And I loved your description there of the slowing down and that it's okay. Because children in particular do not like to be rushed. And then we just have that balance, that kind of stress against each other. So being able to say, okay, children are probably better at doing things than we are in lots of ways. So they can show us how we should live. And if that's a little bit slower, that's really, really good. So I know a lot of people now will be thinking, I need help. So how can they find out more about what a virtual assistant is, or more about what the work that you do?
Yeah, great question. So we are online at katyandcova.com. So katyandcova.com. Also on Instagram at katyandco.va. But you can also find me at katymurrayphotography.com. That links to anything. You can find our podcast through there. The podcast has a lot of tips on motherhood, as well as just work and balancing different elements from a human resources standpoint, but also from the entrepreneur, also from the motherhood. So again, KatyMurray photography.com.
It's lovely. Thank you so much. And I will put all of those links in the show notes for people to access as well. So Katy, thank you so much for doing this with me today. It was lovely to chat to you about all things balance and entrepreneurial and figuring all that out. And as you mentioned, we're always in seasons that are changing and we have to reset and do it again every few weeks or every few months. So thank you very much. And for everyone listening, I'm looking forward to speaking to you all again soon. And as ever, send us a DM on Instagram and I would love to take this conversation further.
Don't forget to download your totally free copy of the Birth Workers Business Playbook, now available for a limited time only. So check out the show notes to get your link and get your copy.